trying to take a moment in each video and let you know that all of our SHOT Show videos that will be coming in January will be posted on Patreon. Only the top 10 list will be posted on YouTube, so that link's below if you're interested. The very first time I went to an NRA annual meeting or really knew anything about the NRA other than just what I saw on television was they held their annual meeting in Kansas City. What I remembered about that meeting is I had never seen more gun manufacturers in one place in my life. When I first started God, Family, and Guns, I really wanted to go to SHOT Show and interview gun manufacturers. However, that first year, they would not let me come to SHOT Show because they said I had to have at least 1,000 subscribers. At the time, I maybe had like 500 or 600. Later that spring, I decided to go ahead and drive out to Louisville, Kentucky to go to the NRA annual meeting because I remembered when I was much younger, all those gun manufacturers. So I drove early in the morning to Louisville, Kentucky, where I spent about 6-7 hours in that convention hall interviewing as many gun manufacturers as I possibly could. What I discovered there was the first time I'd really been exposed to the gun community, other than just going to gun stores and gun ranges myself. I found out that they were incredibly, wonderfully nice people, and that particular convention had over 80,000 people in it the day I was there. And it looked like 80,000 people. Then I drove home that night and I kind of woke up and went to bed in Kansas City, but drove to Louisville and did a bunch of interviews. The following year, it was in Atlanta, and I decided to go ahead and just give it another shot. So I went out to Atlanta, and I flew to Atlanta this time, and I did as many interviews as I could, but my flight home didn't leave till later in the evening, and I saw that Hank Williams Jr. was going to be putting on an NRA concert that evening. And I really wanted to talk to Hank Williams Jr. because in the early 90s, he came to and did a concert in Kansas City where he came out just completely ridiculously hammered drunk, cursed us all out, and then left. Literally, the concert was 5 minutes of him cursing and blurring his words, and I think he might have fallen down, and then he left. So I kind of wanted to talk to him about that particular concert, so I went to where the concert was, and I, as a press member, I was able to kind of get right up there. And what I found out was I ended up having to leave before Hank Williams Jr. came, but all of the leaders of the NRA came out, and Oliver North came out, and Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North gave the opening prayer and was announced that he was now a board member. And I really, just leaving Atlanta that evening, I kind of just had this overall sense of the Spirit of God in that place. Sounds strange, but that's what I got out of it. The following year, when it was in Dallas, it was just not at all the same thing anymore. I think at that point, Oliver North had become the president of the board, but he was forced out. And I remember thinking that was a huge mistake by the NRA, because what they needed was they needed a God-fearing man that America knows, the face of that person, to be the face of the NRA. And for them to force him out like that, I think was the beginning of their downfall. Well, I mean, it wasn't the beginning, but it was the beginning of the public downfall, so to say. But the overall feel I got in Dallas was I didn't really feel the presence of God in that organization anymore. And maybe it was just because I happened to be there and Oliver North gave a prayer the year before. I don't know what it was, but it just wasn't there anymore. That's all I can say. From a guy that kind of can sense God in people and things, it wasn't there anymore. And there also wasn't as many people, going back from how strong it was in Louisville just a few years before that, of 80,000 strong. I don't even think there were 10,000 people in Dallas. I mean, in Louisville, I was trying to fight crowds. By the time I get to Dallas, there were no crowds. So why does the NRA need Jesus? Well, If you look at the direction and strength of the NRA up to 2000 while under the leadership of Charleston Heston, the focus has gone from justice, truth, and freedom revolving around the Second Amendment to politics and holding the debate on gun control, for the most part, hostage from other pro-Second Amendment groups that are willing to fight with God for our Second Amendment freedoms. And of course, without the Second Amendment, you could possibly lose your religious freedoms. So what's the NRA direction looking like right now? Well, let's start with their big leader, Wayne LaPierre, is under a lawsuit for exploiting the NRA for millions. Wilson Phillips is accused of facilitating millions for entertainment and travel. Joshua Powell was just fired for falsifying expenses and accused of assisting Wayne LaPierre to direct millions of NRA dollars. Now, of course, these are just accusations, but what you're talking about is fraud, financial misconduct, and misuse of charitable funds. But of course, these are just accusations. But for being the strongest organization fighting for our Second Amendment rights right now, they need to fall to their knees and pray to God, beg Him for forgiveness for their greed, ask Him for clear direction, and then they need to just shut up and listen to Him and follow that direction. In the end, God is in charge. If you're with Him, you're strong. If you're not, you just might crumble. So there you go. There's my thoughts. I think the biggest mistake that the NRA has made since I've been watching them from afar is I think they've kicked God out and they've replaced Him with greed and politics. Just my 2 cents. NRA definitely needs Jesus. Love to hear your thoughts on this. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. If you feel called to support our channel through Patreon, that link is also below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests. Never hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.